Hello, everyone, and welcome back. We're truly excited here today to get started on this topic, preparing for inspections. Together with NuQual, we've prepared a webinar here. We'll go over how to prepare for inspections, how you should be ready, what kind of preparations you need to do. And as you might noticed, we're two people here. I've got Jim with me, and I know from some of our conversations earlier, he's really got some stories to tell. So we're really truly excited to have you on board today, Jim. So thank you very much for that.
Thank you, Jacob.
Yeah, I mean, in some of the conversations we've had to keep a little bit track of time in terms of not getting overexcited talking about these great topics today. But without much further ado, I think we should jump into it just as a small presentation today. My name is Jakob, and I'm the head of quality here at Eupry, and I'm responsible for all our quality management systems, our calibration laboratory, and also making sure that we follow the industry and how it's moving in board audit best to serve our customers. And then we have you, Jim. Jim here has more than 25 years of experience in the as being an industry auditor, helping pharma and biotech companies. I have to keep a list here with all the things you've been through, conducting audits in North America, Europe, and supporting compliance programs in US and Canada. And today, since 2019, you've started a NuQual, helping companies and pharma companies and CDMOs and going forward in order to keep your audit preparedness on track. Just a little bit introduction. Why are we talking today? Why would this be interesting? We're Eupry, and we're basically trying to become your one vendor, one solution for thermal GxP compliance. But of course, there are the things that we don't handle, and that's where such persons as you, Jim, come into the picture. NuQual has started back, as I mentioned, in 2019 and doing GxP consultancy services. I don't know if you want to put a few more words on why do you think that this is an interesting topic, Jim?
So thank you very much, Jacob. I appreciate your kind introduction. So it's an important topic because, I mean, every regulated company has to go through an inspection at some point or other, and they have to go through them routinely as well, too. So being companies having their compliance in place for their organizations is very critical, both from a quality standpoint, from a customer standpoint, and from a business standpoint for themselves, too, because the business can be impacted hugely if a regulatory body comes in and finds them to be out of compliance. So putting all the pieces in place, making sure that they're in place on an ongoing basis is essential to ensuring that your company is successful as a company, they can continue business, and that doesn't get any regulatory citations that could have an impact on the quality of the business and the performance of the organization.
Absolutely. And just to move it a little bit ahead, just talking a little bit about Eupry, we've been founded since 2014, and we serve more than 6,000 locations across the pharma and biotech industry. But I think without much further ado, I'm going to hand the word to you, Jim. I'm not going to be the one doing most of the talking today. I just want to mention that you're more than welcome to come with some questions or comments along the way, and my job today will be to kindly interrupt Jim and try to post some of your questions as they make sense along the way. But over to you, Jim.
Thank you. Please do. I'll do my best to answer the questions. I'm not sure I'll have all the answers, but I'll certainly give it a good try and do it from the perspective that I have. So once again, just going through the slide here, some of the reasons for inspections is establishes the need a drug establishment license, a DEL, in Canada to be authorized to conduct licensable activities. Their inspections are conducted to assess compliance with regulations, and for Health Canada, they inspect sites to ensure their requirements are met. Same thing with companies that are in Europe and in the US, other places of the world. They have licenses for the products that they sell, for the drugs or the medical devices, for the food products that they sell as well too. So nutraceuticals, those types of things. So as I mentioned, inspectors are very important for the countries to be able to ensure the safety and efficacy and purity of the products that they're providing. So from the standpoint of consumer health and safety, inspections are important, and that's why the regulatory bodies conduct them.
Mm. Great.
Go to the next slide. Okay, thank you. So starting off, part of the important part of the pre-inspection is the facility preparation. So it's important to establish an inspection team. So this should be done really in advance of any inspection. Part of that inspection team would be a host. You would have scribes, you would have runners, you would have backroom support, so subject matter experts, and all of them should have defined roles. So this should be done well in advance of any inspection or audit. You should have this potentially placed in your policy, the quality policy of the organization, in your procedures. As a part of this as well too, you should be assigning specific areas to be used for the inspection room, for the back room, which is usually called the war room, and a coaching room. So the reason why the back room and the coaching room are important is because that back room is where you're going to be managing all the documentation flow that goes into the inspection. The coaching room is going to be the room where, as it says, where you're going to do some pre-coaching with the SMEs for the people that are going to be requested to go into the inspection to speak to the inspectors. You want to ensure that the people that are going into the inspection are knowledgeable, that they know how to present themselves in front of an inspector, and they're not going to say anything that will cause red flags to go up in the inspection room during the inspection. You should be training staff. As I mentioned, you should have procedures in place. You should make sure that your staff are trained on these procedures and how to interact with the inspectors. So typically, long before you're going to have any type of inspection, before any inspection is announced, you're going to want to train your staff. You're going to want to select the staff that are going to be the best people to go in and speak to the inspectors, people that will not be providing information you don't want them to provide. And some people are better at speaking with inspectors than others. Some people have a natural ability to communicate. So you want to have somebody though too that doesn't over communicate as well too. So you want to have the appropriate level of communication for those people.
Can I ask you something, Jim? So in relation to picking out the right people, do you as a company have the right to pick and choose, or is it more based on what the inspectors are requesting?
So that's a good question. So part of that is when you're going through the audit tour, which we're going to talk about a little bit later, or the inspection tour, the inspectors might speak with people within the organization. They can speak to anybody that they want. However, you're going to want to have people available that can speak to the processes that are the most knowledgeable. And typically, depending on how long the inspection is, the size of the inspection, the number of inspectors that you have, the inspectors may go with the people that you selected as well too, because you're telling them, okay, this is the person that is knowledgeable in the area. This is the person that can provide you the best information. And the inspectors are going to want to be able to hear that too, because they're going to want to have somebody in there that can speak to the process, that can speak to the area, and that can give them clear information, because they're wanting to coming in, depending on whether they've been to the site or not. They may be knowledgeable about the site, they may be knowledgeable about the processes, or they may not be. So they want to have clear information to go forward. They can always request other personnel, like when they're reviewing the documentation, they can take a look and see, okay, this person was involved in this, so we're going to ask them to come in. But for the company, you're going to want to put your best foot forward. You're going to want to have the people that are strong. So I'm hoping I didn't over answer your question here.
No, makes sense.
Yeah. So, and typically that's what organizations will do, because they want to strategize how it's going to work. And so the short answer is yes, they can ask for anybody. The good thing, the important thing is you want to have people that are trained, knowledgeable, and you feel confident about going into the inspection as much as possible.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Part of what you need to do too in terms of the pre-inspection as well is you want to perform a gap analysis of your organizations. You want to go through and take a look at where your potential gaps are, where you're not meeting regulatory requirements, where your processes are not working well. You're going to want to look at deviations, nonconformances, issues that you've had in the past, where your challenges are, where your failures are, and then you can take a look at those and make determination as to how to fill those gaps, how to speak to those gaps if they're long-term issues that need correction or that are ongoing corrections for the organization. Another technique that companies will do is they will perform a mock inspection of the organization. So they might hire a consulting company to go in and to conduct an inspection of the organization to see, to kind of get a feel for what to expect, to kind of go do a run through of the process. And so it makes the site more comfortable with what they can expect, the SMEs. It gives training to personnel, and it gives feedback for where other potential gaps may be within the organization. With the FDA now, one of the things that they've mentioned recently is that they used to notify, at least for foreign bodies when they would go and inspect them, or for foreign sites, they would give notification. So now they've come back and they've said, no, we're not going to give notification. We're going to go in unannounced because we want you to be inspection ready. So some organizations are rushing now. They're doing these mock inspections FDA style because they want to be prepared, because they're worried in terms of what to expect if somebody shows up at their doorstep. How do they manage it?
And I guess also doing these mock inspections also helps maybe alleviate some of the stress that can be in an actual inspection situation, right?
Well, it is, because it'll give you feedback in terms of, okay, we've got this issue on the site. It's a long-standing issue. It's something that we have been trying to resolve, but we haven't necessarily been able to. How do we speak it? How do we speak to it? Do we need to create a presentation to explain where we are? Depending on the organization, the types of products that they have, sometimes the complexity of the products is quite extensive. So you want to also educate the inspectors as well too, so that when the inspectors come in and they're doing their review of the documentation, the review of the processes, they're knowledgeable, so that they're not going to give you inspection observations that are not relevant to your organization. Because if you get an inspection observation or a finding from the inspectorate, and you have to deal with it then. So you have to provide some type of response. But if it was a misunderstanding, you want to avoid that, because it avoids frustration on your part. Also, too, depending on the size of your organization, you may have your corporate group involved as well, too. So there may be, during the inspection, you may have to cascade upward to that corporate group and explain, okay, why do you have these issues in place? Why are these things there? So there's a lot of things that can be alleviated by having the mock inspections.
Great. Yeah.
So we talked about the inspection in the war room. So the inspection room is a designated room for the inspectors. It's staffed by inspection hosts and scribes. So typically the people, you want to determine in advance how many hosts you're going to have. So if you're going to have, if you know in advance that you're going to have 3 inspectors coming onto your site, then you're likely going to want to have a host for each one of those inspectors, because you're going to want to be able to provide information. You're going to want to be able to provide them with the feedback that they want in a very quick manner. One of the things when the inspectors come in, or any auditor comes in, is they want to be able to get the information quickly, promptly, not have to wait for it. If they have questions or something, they want to be able to have the answers come quickly. And the faster that the site can provide that information, the better the site looks, and the more comfortable the inspector feels that the processes are in place and the company understands the process, and they're able to speak to it. So it basically raises the level of competence in the eyes of the inspectors for the site. It's a designated room for the inspectors. It's staffed by inspection hosts and scribes. These hosts and scribes have gone through that training as well too. You want to select people to be scribes who are able to take really good notes, able to communicate effectively, and know how to make requests, to be knowledgeable of the organization, so that they can send out requests through the scribes to the back room for people in the organization. So if they know that these SMEs are available, then they can, or that they are people that are trained as SMEs, so they can request people specifically. They can provide comments too as well on potential observations as well that may be coming up, or potential findings that may be coming up. So they have a very critical role, as well as the host has a critical role, and the scribe has a critical role. Typically, it's a cooperative effort between the two of them. Okay, so then the back room. Back room is an essential part of the operation, as we mentioned. They're the ones who are coordinating the documentation flow. They're reviewing the documentation. So if you have a request from an inspector, some documentation that's going to be going into the inspection room for the inspector to look at, you're going to want to do a pre-review of that documentation. The reason why you want to do that pre-review is you want to see if there's any gaps, if there's any potential findings, any issues, things that you may not want to be communicating to the inspector if possible. So you want to know where those gaps are, where those issues are before that information goes in, and potentially address any issues if you can before. So sometimes that's possible, sometimes it's not, but you want to make sure that there's no glaring errors in that documentation that's going into the room. And if the back room sees that there is any issues, then they're going to want to maybe delay that information going in if possible. So it's about information flow. So you don't want to delay the information going to the inspector, but at the same time, the caveat is you don't want to provide information that's going to cause a larger issue. So sometimes you're going to have to delay information going into the room.
Yeah, and I guess it's a balance of like still providing the information that they ask for and not withholding anything, but still making sure that it's a natural flow, right?
Or having somebody also available to speak to it so they can clarify what the issue is, or they can say, we've already put this issue, this CAPA, maybe a CAPA in place to address the issue in advance. So this is what we've done. This is where it is. This is what we're doing. So somebody who can speak to it if needed and have that person ready to speak to it. So they do the review, they coordinate the flow coming into the back room, going out into the inspection room. All the information that's going into the inspection room, you're going to want to track. You're going to want to know what's gone in and what comes back out of the inspection room. Now, these days, this is when I'm talking about hard copy documentation. In this day and age, we have both hard copy and we have electronic documentation. So in some cases, the company may decide to provide the majority of information electronically. So they may have a SharePoint site or a Dropbox or a box or something, a repository that the inspector can look at electronically. So that's another way to control things. There's pluses and minuses to that because the information is being put in there. Some information will be put in advance, some information will be going in during the actual inspection as well too. But it's good to capitalize on the use of electronic flow control as well too. For the scribes that are in the room, we have the tools available. Companies will use things like Teams or whatever similar systems to be able to communicate back and forth with the people in the back room and with people in the organization to be able to basically manage the flow. So once again, it's about documentation control. It's about flow. It's about issuing and retrieving the documentation, recording all the documentation that's going in, and coordinating the information flow with the scribes and the hosts in the room. So the scribes and the hosts should also be communicating as well too. The scribes typically won't be speaking to the inspectors in the room. They'll be speaking with the host. They'll be providing the documentation, recording the discussions, the conversations, potential issues that may arise. And also the back room is managing the documentation requests. They're preparing the SMEs to go in for the coaching part of the operation, and they're coordinating that whole flow.
That makes a lot of sense. And I guess also a large part of controlling the documentation is also if there are any mistakes in terms of getting the most recent documentation, you can always go back and try to resolve some of those issues that might be related to outdated documents or.
Exactly. Hopefully you don't have any documents that are outdated. Every organization has challenges, and that's part of why you're doing your gap analysis, is to try and triage and make sure that you're inspection ready And that's one of the things that is expected by the inspectors, is that any organization that is providing regulated substances or products are inspection ready at all times. So they should be ready for the inspectors to come in. And that's becoming more and more prevalent, that if you're not ready, and the inspectors see that when they're there, then they question the way the organization is managing their quality system, the way the communication is between the upper management, middle management, and the people on the floor, doing the work, doing that work that is directly associated with the organization's products and testing.
Absolutely.
So for the inspection scope and duration, so this is a very broad thing. It'll depend on the inspectorate. It'll depend on the size of the organization. An on-site inspection could last anywhere from 1 to 5 days. In some cases, depending on the size of the organization, they might be on site for 2 weeks, which is you probably would not want, because it's hard. It's hard for some organizations to manage that. If you're a smaller company, the longer they're on site, the harder it is for you to manage that, because as a part of the inspection process, at the end of each day, and we'll get to that later, but at the end of each day, you're going to want to look at what issues have arisen, and you're going to want to try and triage any potential issues so that it doesn't become a finding that's linked into the system that is going to stay. If you can address it, it's possible. And this is where there's some variation between inspectorates, where if you address an observation or a finding, they may say, okay, we'll take that off the list. In some cases, the inspectors will say, we found it, even though you're addressing it, we're still keeping that as an observation. But in the past, one of the things that organizations have tried to do is to address those issues or findings right away, so that before the end of the inspection, they're not going to have a finding that's communicated at the end.
Yeah, and I guess they're there for like 8 hours a day, and then you'd have your after the day sort of looking at the findings or possible observations. So it's some long days.
It is long days. So it's late days and it's early days as well too, depending on the inspectors, the expectations of the inspectors. So that can be across the board. It can vary. There can be a lot of divergence between inspectors, whether it be, you and I were talking earlier before about different inspectorates. So it could be the EU, it could be the FDA, it could be Health Canada, it could be China, it could be Korea, depending on the countries that you're selling into. It could be, and there's a variety there in terms of it's really across the board. Typically, in most cases in the past, the site is contacted 2 to 3 weeks before the inspection to agree on the date of the inspection, and sometimes the duration as well too. The scope of the inspection, once again, is dependent on the inspectorate as well as the licensable activities that are being assessed by the inspectors.
And can I ask you, do you see any major differences between the different inspection bodies? I mean, being EMA or FDA or wherever they arrive from?
Yes, very, very much so. In the past, there's variances between the actual inspectors. So in the past, though, the FDA had the perception of being very tough, being very, the focus may be different from what the EU is looking at, what the MCA is looking at, what Health Canada is looking at, what China or Korea will be looking at. Their focus may be different, and their expectations may be different as well too. And the level of competence as well in terms of the inspectors may vary. Typically, the inspectors will have a degree or a PhD or some type of educational background that helps them with what they're doing. It really depends, though. Some of them will be more experienced and some will be less. So there's a wide variety. But yes, even in terms of the inspectorates, it's quite a bit different. But it's evolving too. So I know for Health Canada, speaking from that standpoint, I know they've come up in recent years and have improved in terms of the way they do the inspections and the way they look at things. And there can be challenges no matter what. When you have an inspector coming in and you've got them asking questions, then it's up to you to address it.
Great.
And to be clear, so we'll get more about that too.
Yeah.
So typically, the inspector will have pre-inspection requests. So they'll ask for documentation. Typically, they'll be regarding the facility information, if there's any non-conformances, and they'll look at the non-conformance logs, the CAPA logs, the list of SOPs, stability data, any change controls or complaints. These are some of the things that they may ask for in advance. They want to know more about some of your products if they don't have information on your products, but they'll want to get this information to be able to do a pre-assessment and be ready for when they come on site. And auditors do this as well too. So these are things that are essential for them so that they can come in and hit the ground running, basically.
Great.
So you have the inspection team we mentioned. So, and once again, I kind of touched on this before, inspectors are qualified by education, knowledge, and experience to conduct the inspections. They may include qualified chemists, microbiologists, other disciplines. They would bring newly recruited staff on site to do on-site training sometimes. So, I mean, one of the things that they need to do is they need to keep going in terms of having inspectors that are qualified and trained. So they will bring, in some cases, they'll let you know that the inspector is new. In some cases they will, some cases they won't. Typically, the inspection team, you're going to have someone who's in charge of the inspection team, coordinating the other inspectors. Everybody will be talking to them and coordinating their activities.
Great.
So an overview of the inspection. So you have typically when you have the inspection, you would have the inspectors come on site. You're going to want to know when they're coming on site, if they need to be, if they need to have transport to the site. You want to have something in place so that the people in the back room, the people in the inspection room, everybody is notified and know, to be ready. The inspectors are on site and to be prepared. And the whole facility there should be a communication to the whole facility so that, obviously when you have the inspectors on site, you're going on with business as usual, but you want to make sure that people are aware so that they're not bumping into the inspectors, they're not doing things that they shouldn't be. Even the people that are not going to be directly interacting when the inspectors are going on tour, where they're coming to the site, people may come across them as well too. So they want to make sure they want to have that training in advance. So you have an opening meeting with the inspectors. So typically that's the senior staff. It's the introduction of the staff and the inspectors. Typically there's a presentation by the site, including an overview of the facility design, the processes, and the personnel. The inspectors typically will discuss the inspection schedule, the products or the operations that they're going to be reviewing. So they'll have that portion of it. They'll be talking about what their expectations are, what they're going to do over the next couple of days, what additional requests they may have when they come on site, and the way they want to have the inspection go to. And if they have any concerns that they're bringing in to the inspection, they're going to want to ask about that as well too. So at that point, the typical way it will run is there will be a facility tour, because the inspectors will want to go through the facility, and depending on the size of the complexity of the facility, it may be extensive, it may have to be separated. For a large organization, if it's a CDMO, then they may have to go to different areas. They may need to go to the production, the testing, the different aspects of production, the shipping and receiving areas, all the different areas that would have an impact on the quality, safety, efficacy of the product. So they'll go on the tour, and then they'll have a return to the inspection room after they go through that, finish the tour. They may go on subsequent tours as well too. But when they return to the inspection room, they're going to want to review the procedures, the operations, the records, and they want to have interviews with the personnel or SMEs. Typically, it'd be the subject matter experts, and to assess the compliance with the requirements. And they'll evaluate and examine the electronic data and systems. And then you're going to have a closeout meeting. At the end of that, the inspector is going to be meeting with the senior staff to present observations, recommendations, and best practices. So having said this, if your inspection is 5 days, you may have a daily debrief with the inspectors. They're going to go through, if any inspection findings they have, things they want to see for the next day, and areas that they may want to go and tour because they've looked at some documentation and they need to review some additional areas. Then you have a post-inspection exit meeting at the end where you're meeting with senior staff for final observations and classification and notice of compliance or non-compliance for the facility. So that's kind of the overview. I know I kind of dug into it a little bit deeply as well too, but that's generally the way inspections will run.
Yeah, and I guess there's also a balance to strike in terms of letting everyone, as you began with on this slide, letting everyone know that the inspectors are on site, but you also don't want everyone to just leave and looking like a ghost facility, right? I mean,
exactly.
You don't want to sort of hide that it's an operational company that you're running. It's not just senior staff, really.
So I've had a situation in the past where, as an auditor, I've been going in and conducted the audit, and I would be going into the operational areas, and this is exactly what happened. I'm going into the area, and then there's nobody there. Oh, we don't have anything for your, working. Nobody's working at this point in time or something, or it's break or something. Yeah. And then I saw people running by another part of it, and so then it goes to your head. So is this really the, or is an operation trying to hide anything? So that's kind of what goes through your mind if that happens. So, and it does happen in the past. I had that experience. Hopefully, I think a company that is run well and that is managing things appropriately will not do something like that. It's a tactic that really is not a good idea for an organization.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So areas that are typically reviewed as a part of the inspection, there'll be the quality management system that's in place. They'll take a look at the facility design because they're going to want to know what the scope is of the audit, which areas they need to look at, which areas they need to review. They want to target, if the inspection is very specific to a certain product, then they're going to want to target those areas. Something that's very big and very important over the years, becoming more and more so, is data integrity and record keeping. So that's both with hard copy systems, with electronic systems. You want to make sure that the equipment is where needed, it's qualified, and you have validation of your processes. You want to ensure that the employees that are running the operations that are involved and doing testing and production of product, they are qualified by both their education as well as the training within the site, and making sure that their training is up to date. They're going to be looking at procedures and policies that are in place. How extensive is the operation? Do they have procedures that are relevant for the type of operations they're conducting? And does it make sense? And are the policies and procedures interlinked? And are they being used? So that's one of the things too. Are they being used by the organization? Or do you have all these nice SOPs or policies in place and nobody's aware of them? When you speak to the people, do they really understand? Or is it this level of detail that you have? Is it reflective of the operation? Are the people trained on it? Are they applying it? You're going to look at raw material controls, how the flow of the materials, the traceability of the materials, incoming, how they're stored, so storage facilities, temperature monitoring that would be related to the storage facilities if needed, humidity control, temperature control, validation of that, checking of that, segregation of materials and products. Going into the manufacturing areas as well too, looking at how manufacturing is being conducted, how the people are gowned or dressed, what the requirements are for that, the potential for environmental contamination. Do you have pest control in place, or do you have cleaning programs in place? Do you have cleaning of operations after they're done? Are you doing pre-cleaning? Are you doing post-cleaning? Do you have cleaning validation for equipment and processes? Looking at the sanitary conditions of the company, how often do personnel change their gowns, change their uniforms? Where do they use in terms of the washrooms, in terms of the lunchrooms? What are the issues potentially there? Do they have pest control in place for the organization? And are they managing that appropriately? Looking at the product testing and stability in the laboratories, how is that testing being conducted? Do they have they have products on stability? Are they managing it on site? Are they managing it off site? Looking at the packaging and labeling controls, are things being managed appropriately in terms of the type of packaging that they have, in terms of the types of labeling they have? Is it hard copy labeling? Is it electronic labeling in place, or electronic controls in place? Looking at the distribution of the product, and if the company has had any recalls, how do they manage recalls? Do they do mock recalls? Tell me if I'm going too fast here, please.
That's great. Yeah.
You look at the suppliers that they have for the organization. Are they qualified? Are they approved? Do they manage them? Do they have an oversight of those suppliers? And do they control them well? Because your suppliers are very critical to your organization, because they're going to be providing they're going to be providing the raw materials, they're going to be providing the services. And if they're not being appropriately qualified or managed, and you don't have confidence in them, how is that impacting your organization? So the inspectors are going to be looking at that as well too, because it's a critical part of the operation. They're going to look at sample retention and where you have that as well too.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So digging down a little bit deeper into the facility tour, the tour typically starts at receiving and goes to the, so you've got storage and distribution, and then to continue on to production and packaging and testing areas. The facility tour, depending on, once again, this depends on the size, it depends on the complexity of the operation. 2 to 3 hours, it can be much, much longer. It can be a whole day, depends on the operation. But once again, it depends what the inspectors are reviewing, and it depends on the complexity of the organization, and also if there have been any issues that have come up with the products or the processes that have been noted to the inspectorate, or if they've had previous issues of non-compliance, that maybe the inspectors are coming back to look at. During the tour, the inspector takes notes. They ask questions of the area personnel. So they're going to want not just to speak to the person who's taking them on the tour. They're going to want to talk to the people in the areas. They're going to want to be able to select who they speak to. So in some cases, they'll speak to the SMEs. They might speak to somebody else that's working in the area, ask a question. That's one of the reasons why you want to have all personnel trained. You're going to have specific SMEs to talk to processes in the inspection room, but you're going to want to have all personnel trained on inspection readiness, because they may have to speak to the inspectors. And typically when I would do an audit too, I would try and see, okay, who's working in this area, and the host might try to give me all the information, but really you want to talk to the people that are doing the activity, working on the process, they're involved in the area, because that's where the information that is relevant to the operation is. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So the inspector goes through, takes notes, asks questions of the area personnel, reviews the area documentation. They'll see if there's any glaring errors. Is there any issues with data integrity? Are the personnel, do they demonstrate Alcoa plus? I think it's plus now. I don't know.
Keeps on expanding.
Exactly. If there's any challenges with the electronic systems, if they may come and they may try and check the electronic systems that are there to see if they have audit trails, if there's any issues in terms of data integrity with the computerized equipment or the systems that are managing that equipment. They'll check for the equipment calibrations and maintenance. So if there's labels or if there's electronic calibrations that information, they'll be wanting to look at that. They'll look at the areas to see how the flow goes. So is the flow within the organization, is it logical? Is there a potential for contaminations of products or personnel that may have cause an issue for the organization or for the product? The company host, the site head or quality director, will typically do that, guide the inspector through this tour, and they provide commentary on the activities. They answer questions. So going to the areas, they may give the high-level answers, and then they'll offer up the personnel that are working in the area to speak to specifics of what they're doing in the area. The host will also secure requested information. So they'll take notes while they're going through, and they might use a cell phone or something of that nature to be able to communicate directly back to the back room. Yes, the inspector has asked to speak to these people. He's asked to look at this documentation, so please have it ready and have it reviewed. So that whole review process may start during the audit tour, and typically does. So that communication is essential during the audit tour, because it helps the company provide the documentation to the inspectors in a reasonable time, in a reasonable fashion. Makes the inspectors happy as well too, because they're getting that information flow coming to them as they're requesting it.
Makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
So there's a lot to do. There's a lot involved in the inspections and what happens during the inspections as well too. So once again, the inspectors will look for materials or equipment that are not properly identified or managed or stored. So if you have hoses that are not hung to dry, if there's potential for product contamination. I've seen an issue where product was produced in one production room, and then to do completion of the production, it was moved through the corridor across to another part of the production. And so the question then becomes, do they gown, do they degown? What's the potential for the product contamination? Is the product covered? So all these things. So this is something that may be observed during the production process. You may want to limit the viewing of the inspectors to something like that. If it's you may want to revise that process, or you may want to take a look at how you can manage it appropriately if it's something that you can't change because of the nature of the design of your facility. Something I've seen in the past, and it's something that may be challenging for organizations that are producing certain types of products. So the inspectors will also look at issues with the design, like we were just mentioning, the flow of personnel or product. If there's any evidence of neglect in the facility, they'll be looking at the walls, the way they're cleaned, the floors, the ceilings. If they have dust collectors, if they have HEPA filtration systems, do they visually appear clean? Is there any visual evidence of contamination? Is there segments of the process that provide control to ensure, if it's a very dusty process, do they do appropriate cleaning? At what stage do they do cleaning? When they talk with the personnel, when they're going through, they'll be asking them about their responsibilities, what they do in the area. They want to see, are the personnel knowledgeable? Do they understand what they're doing? Are there any red flags in terms of the knowledge of the personnel of what they're doing? And typically, it depends on the personnel, it depends how well they're trained. They may offer up information. Oh, we don't like the way this process runs. We never did. Or, this guy doesn't do his job properly, or something like that. I mean, typically it's not necessarily things like that, but they will offer up information that is germane to the inspector making a determination. Is this process in control? Is it out of control, or are there potential issues that need to be addressed in terms of training, in terms of knowledge, in terms of the confidence of the employees in terms of what they're doing. Be looking at the documentation, that if it's hard copy documentation in the area, they'll be looking at the documentation to see if there's any issues with data integrity regarding that documentation. And is there any fraudulent activities that might be going on potentially? Hopefully there's not any fraudulent activities. But if anybody's backdating or postdating, or if the information is being completed in an appropriate manner. So once again, if the documentation is incomplete, it's inaccurate, unclear, doesn't meet GxP, so good documentation practice requirements as well. And once again, looking at the data integrity of the documentation and the computer systems in tandem, because we have both. So
absolutely. Yeah.
So post-tour in the inspection room. So if they've gone on the tour, they've come back. So after the tour, the remaining portion of the inspection will be dedicated to the review of the documentation. However, having said that, they may go back and look in other areas again too, depending once again on the length of the inspection. Inspectors will have an expectation that the documentation will be provided promptly, as we mentioned. Any delay may cause the inspector to question the competence of the system under review, or of the personnel, or the process that you're doing it. And this is something that inspectors, I've heard comment about in the past inspections that I've been in. They were upset the documentation wasn't coming quick enough. They don't understand. They haven't been able to speak to the personnel. We've been waiting for this. So one of the things that the organization has to do, if there are issues with the documentation, with the process, if there are some compliance gaps that need to be addressed, they're going to want to be able to provide other information for the inspector to review. Well, we don't have this quite ready yet, but we have this documentation you requested to take a look at. So it's a matter of organizing that and being able to manage that, the documentation flow, so that they can keep the inspector happy, even though they're not getting what they need right away. The part of the discussion too may be that we need to have the personnel speak to it, and we need to have the availability of the personnel. And the inspector should be aware that even though they're in the inspection, the operations are ongoing and personnel are integral to the process, and they continued operation of the organization. Subject matter experts will be expected to be available for interviews once again to speak, as we mentioned, and the area personnel should remain inspection ready, as the inspectors may decide to revisit the areas based on documentation review. So if, say, the inspectors have gone to an area already, they may go back again. So everybody should stay diligent in terms of the potential. One of the things that the scribes in the back room should be doing is they should be communicating to the area managers when the inspectors want to come, if they want to come back again and visit something again. They may want to re-review a process as well too. So we talked about the coaching aspect of it. So there's going to be a separate coaching room for personnel prior to the inspection room. The coach will be responsible for prepping the subject matter experts in advance. The coach should be somebody that is knowledgeable, is able to understand the products and processes. And the coach should also be able to read people, see how they are in terms of presentation, whether and they should be able to give feedback as well too. So the coach needs to be somebody that is well educated, well experienced, and able to provide positive and constructive and valuable feedback for the SMEs prior to going in. The best practice is to have SMEs coached on the information they will present, along with the reviewed documentation that's going to be brought into the inspection room. So if an SME has to talk to testing of this certain product and they have to bring it in, they should be coached on that specific. They should be presenting to the coach. Coach should be evaluating that presentation, giving them feedback. Yes, you can speak on this. Maybe you should de-emphasize this. Maybe you should not speak about this particular product because this is something we still need to address, some issue that we have, and we don't want to highlight that to the inspector.
Absolutely.
And they want to encourage the SMEs as well too, because one of the things going into an inspection, going in front of an inspector, it's very difficult for some people. And because you're on display, you have to basically present what you know, and you know you're going to be questioned, and it's hard, it's difficult.
And I guess that goes for a lot of audit situations, right? That some people need a little bit of time to warm up and really start to share their knowledge in a way that makes sense also to an inspector or an internal auditor, whoever it might be, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And one of the things the coach should do too is they should evaluate. Hopefully this is done in advance, but the coach may have to provide feedback saying, no, this person really shouldn't be speaking to the inspectors because, and unfortunately, sometimes that's the case because they do tend to overshare, or maybe there's different reasons why that could be the case. So you want to protect the organization as well too. So it's kind of a balance. Sometimes, hopefully that's not the case, but sometimes you run into that.
Absolutely.
So basically, the interaction with the inspectors, it's important how people interact with the inspectors, I think, as I mentioned before. So during the tour and when entering the inspection room, subject matter experts should wait for the inspector to address them or for the host to introduce them and the topic of a review. The subject matter experts should speak clearly. Here I'm mumbling here. Speak clearly and concisely to the processes and systems. The SMEs need to understand the subject area they will be speaking to and be calm and confident when they address the inspector. So a lot of times, I mean, inspectors are human as well too. They respond to people that seem confident, that appear competent, that present well. That makes an impact on the inspector, and it makes an impact for the inspection. So something that might have been an observation, I've seen in the past where it wasn't an observation because of the way it was presented to the inspector by the SME. So it makes a huge difference. It's important for the, sorry, I'm losing a little bit of my voice here, I apologize. It's important for the SME not to offer unrequested information, but only to provide the information requested. Now, this is a little bit of a balancing act because you want to show confidence, you want to show competency, and you want to show knowledge of the process. So in some cases where the SME is sharing some of the additional information, it's helpful to the inspection, it's helpful, but if it's going to be a potential compliance issue, then you don't want to share that. So it's a little bit of a, so that's why I said some people are better at doing that than others. And you can be trained to do that, but it takes a little bit of work to get to that.
And I'm just going to interrupt with a short question here from Susanna. Thank you very much. How do you make sure that the inspectors do not get frustrated waiting for documentation and at the same time making sure that the SMEs are well coached before entering the inspection room? I guess a little touches a little bit back to something you mentioned before about keeping the flow going, but maybe you can elaborate a little bit.
Exactly. So Susanna, that's a great question. And that's a challenge. And a lot of people ask that. So once again, yeah, it does go back to, you have to make a decision at some point. So the coach should be able to make a decision. Is the person ready to go in? You want to get that person in the room as soon as possible. And so there might be a decision made in collaboration with the host and the coach to determine, is this person ready to go in? And they may need to be, even though the coach may feel, well, they're not 100% ready, there may be some issues, they may need to be sent in anyways, because the risk of having the inspector frustrated is greater than the compliance risk that might be associated with that. So the challenge, the best way to manage that, if you can, is in advance to have this person well coached, knowledgeable of the areas. That's why the gap analysis is important too, because if you can identify and then address the issues in advance, then that's part of how you can triage that in advance of that happening. But yeah, so you can also provide other information that they've requested and say, well, we don't have this yet, but we do have this. So yeah, it's very important the inspectors don't get frustrated.
I can see Barbara follows up here with a good recommendation is you have to be able to keep a poker face. That seems
it's true. But in line with that, you have to be careful. You want to be, I'm hesitant to say this, but you want to be friendly as well too. You don't want to give the impression that you're afraid, that you're hiding something. So sometimes it's difficult to do that. But yeah, you want to just provide the information that's there and show confidence in it, and feel confident in yourself too, because that confidence comes across basically in the inspection.
Yeah. Okay, moving a bit on here, also in the interest of time. Yeah.
Okay, so there's a pre-closing meeting inspection team meeting. So if you have more than one inspector, they're going to want to, I'm sorry, that's kind of bad wording there, I guess, but you're going to want to have, the inspectors are going to want to have time to meet together to discuss what observations or findings they have, and then to think about what they're going to communicate to the site. They may do that on a daily basis. If there's going to be like a 5-day inspection or 2-week inspection, depending, they may want to have that each day before they have the daily closing meeting with the auditee or with the organization. Typically, it takes about an hour or so, or it may take less. It depends. And if there's only one inspector, then they might just want to have some time to review their notes. They might want to have some time before that daily wrap-up meeting or the final closing or that closing meeting to take that time.
Absolutely.
So then you have the post-inspection exit meeting where the presentation of the inspection exit notice. So after the site inspection, any findings by the regulatory body will be provided. The establishment must take prompt corrective actions to address the observations noted in the exit notice. The establishment will need to create and implement corrective actions and preventative actions, depending on what the issue is, and also provide targets for completion dates. So this is a very important aspect that the site take this seriously, that senior management is engaged all the way along with the middle and lower management to discuss how they're going to address these things, and to be thoughtful and precise in terms of the information provided. Because bad responses, incorrect, incomplete, it's a recipe for disaster, basically.
Absolutely.
So once again, the response to the regulatory findings should be formal, thorough, detailed, include a CAPA plan, developed using quality risk management principles. There should be a root cause analysis that would identify the underlying causes include corrections, corrective actions, and preventative actions as relevant, along with timelines for their implementation. And these will be assessed to determine by the inspectorate to determine acceptability of the CAPA plan. Because this is your resolution to the issue that they've seen. And is it thorough? Is it thoughtful? Is it well thought out? And have they put all the evaluation of it in place, as well as thought about the actions that they're going to put in place to prevent it from happening, to address it immediately, triage any impact that these issues have had, and look at any future potential occurrences of this. So basically, a thorough and robust CAPA process.
Absolutely. Okay, I think we reached the end of the line here. I mean, we're also running out of time. But first of all, thank you, Jim. It was truly exciting. It's always nice to have someone with so many years of experience as yourself getting into sort of what matters and what's the important key aspects to keep track of here. And thank you everyone who posted questions along the way. It was really nice to see all the comments as well. If you don't mind, put in the comments, please, whether there's some feedback for Jim here and the presentation in general. Otherwise, you're always welcome to go on our website at eupry.com and see more of the recorded webinars we have, and also we have a lot of upcoming. But thank you very much, Jim, for taking the time here to introduce this very interesting topic. And have a great evening or afternoon or morning for wherever you are in the world.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.